Got some new equipment. Got this nice microphone, so hopefully the audio quality is a little bit better. But yeah, here we are, just local high school. We're gonna do some resisted sprints with the tire today. 6 to 8 reps, honestly, probably just gonna be 6 reps. And then we'll have a big rest, maybe like 10 to 15 minutes. And then I'm gonna run one 400 meter. Just kind of like as a tester, not full intensity, maybe like 85 to 90% intensity. Just focus on good posture, good running mechanics throughout the last 100 meters. So I had to split this session up. Don't usually train on Fridays, but it's gonna be a lot of rain tomorrow. I don't really want to do my weighted sprints out in the rain if I don't have to. That's just a lot of equipment to put away, and it's gonna get soaking wet and whatever. So yeah, I decided to do the first portion of my normal third session of the week here at the track, and then tomorrow I'll do the remainder of the session in the gym. And I'll just talk in between sets today. Today's topic is coaching. My experience of coaching, my experience being a coach, my experience being coached, and what to look for in a coach. Let's get to it. Let's get this. Rep 2, here we go. All right, so you saw me do 2 following starts. The idea with that exercise is I'm just trying to feel the lean of my body forward so that I can push behind my center of mass. If my center of mass is somewhere like here, let's say, if that's where like my hips or my belly button is, I want to push behind it. I don't want to overextend, reach in front, because then I'm braking. I stop myself and then I have to project myself. Instead, I want to use momentum, accelerate forward. You can definitely see in that previous video where I raced Adam, he kicked my ass in that aspect of the race. All right, I'll go right leg forward to start this first rep. All right, I want you guys to check out my sled setup. So all that I really did was I grabbed a tire that someone had no use for. I guess it was flat, just from someone's house. I asked them, hey, do you think I could use that tire? And they're like, yeah, sure, take it off my hands for free, I don't care. Then what we did was I drilled a hole through here, and I don't know if you can see. What I did was I drilled a hole through, looped the strap through. There's that little loop there, and I just fed it through here. And then there's a loop at the other end. So what we do is just take that loop, pull it through, step on this, and now you have a loop that will cinch tight around your waist. So the tire is approximately 25 pounds. I haven't added 25 pounds in there. I just have these wood planks to support the plate because it's too small, it'll fall out. And yeah, that's what I've been using. Any sled drags or sprints. If you can set it up where it's kind of like a shuttle and you don't have to walk the sled back between reps, that'd be ideal. Or if you can have like a shuttle of athletes, like maybe 4 athletes, like one goes this way, runs it back, then goes this way again, runs it back, and then they start over. It just saves a lot of time. Back when I was coaching gymnastics full time, I used to have all these like quotes, these little sayings, catchphrases essentially. Stuff along the lines of like, you know, if your arms are bending, you're just pretending like you're doing a handstand. It's gotta be straight arms. One I got from one of my colleagues, Greg Jackson, was he's either really strong or doing it wrong. Like it'd be like someone's like, yo, I bench pressed 300 pounds, coach, and they're like bent their arm like 20 degrees, then pressed out, and we're like, okay, he's definitely doing it wrong. I actually used to keep a little journal, and we called it Keenanisms. That's what my the athletes I coach, that's what the term they coined. So I just write these little quotes down, or if I would say something, the athletes would be like, coach, write that down in the book, write that down in the book. So one that I came across, then I take no credit for this. I don't believe I was the one who coined this term, but it goes something like this. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. When I'm doing these resisted sprints, that's what I'm thinking in my head. Smooth first, speed second. Hit the positions. And when you have a weighted sled here, it actually does slow you down quite a bit. So you have an opportunity to feel those positions a little bit more, as opposed to when you're just running full tilt, just hauling ass. So that's why I like to use resisted sprints, especially in my early phases of the training cycle. Just to, one, feel the positions, and two, build some specific strength in the sprints. Let's get down to brass tacks here. Coaching. How to choose a coach. So the first thing I'm thinking of here is whether you're the athlete yourself or if it's your child. You got to think about, why am I doing this sport? Okay, most people join sport for fun, entertainment, leisure. I think the next would be like exercise. And then especially if you're talking about youth sport, like someone who's in elementary school, high school, someone who's not an adult, for like a social aspect and like learning life lessons, learning valuable life lessons, time management, risk assessment, problem solving, cooperation, teamwork, things like that. So if that's it, get in, okay? Choose a coach, I would say first of all, who's very egalitarian. Everyone is equal. This is how I think you should treat people, especially just first walking into the gym or the club. Egalitarian. Everyone has equal opportunity. I'm treating everyone as equals, and it's just a learning phase, a discovery phase. Yes, you have some structure, you have some guidance, but we should focus on learning, or the coach should focus on learning, teaching the athletes, engagement, and retention, in my opinion. Because you want to have people coming back, you know? And if you just kill people, some coaches will be like, well, I just destroy them on the first day, just see if they're tough to come back. Well, that's one perspective, but in my opinion, that's not good, especially if we're dealing with children. Like, what the hell is that about? If your goal for this activity is to be competitive, so we're competing at like within the province or outside the province, so like provincial level or nationally, then you got to think it becomes a little less egalitarian because there's standards, right? So unfortunately, the cream rises to the top. This is competition. Some people do get left behind. They either don't want to put the work in, they're unable, like saying I guess would be unwilling or unable. But if you're a kid, you have time, and the coach should always, you never know who's going to be the best. So you got to give fair attention to everyone, but there is standards to be hit. There is definitely a lot more responsibility for both the coach and the athlete. So in that, you're a little bit less egalitarian in terms of the coaching you're going to choose, because you need a coach who is goal focused, but also thinking about your long-term development. And by thinking about your long-term development, what I mean is your coach isn't going to just burn you out, milk you dry to be the 13-year-old U13 provincial champ, and then you can't even compete when you're 16 because you're burned out and your body's destroyed. That's what I mean by your coach is thinking about your long-term performance. What's the cue on this rep? Foot down, put the foot down fast. Foot down fast. Let's go. Foot down fast. I don't know, that one felt a lot different. I don't know if I was leaning forward too much or my stride was too short, but it felt different, that's for sure. So at this level, depending on your sport, you know, you're making more sacrifices here. You're sacrificing, you know, if you're a little kid playing with your friends every day after school or whenever you want on the weekends, maybe you're sacrificing other sport activities that you want to do or other extracurriculars. If you're older, you know, you might miss out on a couple family activities or might be late to certain events because training has now become more of a priority. Okay, you can't just miss sessions at this point where you're competing provincially. Then the next level above that would be like competing nationally. So this is true high performance, in my opinion. This is when you start to get real. So at this level, if you're a youth in elementary school and high school, in certain sports like maybe tennis, swimming, gymnastics, I know in these sports you're going to be involved in some sort of special school program. Maybe you're leaving school early or certain times of the day for certain days of the week in order to do daytime training. Maybe you have multiple sessions in one day sometimes. And again, more sacrifices. But at this point, you know, you're representing a province. You're traveling around the country. And if you live in my country, Canada, you're going to be traveling pretty far for competitions. But yeah, it's really a status symbol to be a national level athlete. It's there's something to be said. The sacrifices do come with certain status, and that's when things start to get really serious. That's when you can even get some funding from the country to pursue your sport. If you're in Canada, it's going to be pretty much jack shit in terms of funding. It's nothing you can live off of, but it might help you pay the training fees. It might help you pay for physio and whatnot. So it's something. I felt like the smoothest rep today so far. Nice. So that's national level. That is just a step below the pros. I guess you could consider it like semi-pro. And when you're international level, it means you're a world team member. You represent your country in international competition. So like an individual sport, for example, or Olympic sports, you're talking about like World Cups. This is World Championships. This is continental championships like European Championships, Asian Championships, Pan American Championships, whatnot. And then the Olympic Games, I guess being the precipice of all international competition. I would also consider professional sport like NHL, MLB, NBA, and any other leagues across the globe. Just because you have international players, you have players that there's a lot of money involved. This is a business. There's players from all across the globe. You know, NBA teams. You have people from Europe. You have people from Africa. You have people from the U.S., Canada, whatnot. So this is the highest level here. This is a job. If you're a professional sport and you're getting paid pretty decent salary, then this is all you really got to worry about for the time being. If you're in Canada and you don't have private sponsorships or your parents aren't, you know, making mad coin, unless you're like a Nepo baby, then you're gonna need a job. So this would be essentially your second job. I would consider it international level competition or international level athlete. That's like another job. Being a national level athlete, that's like a part-time job. Being a provincial level athlete, it's like kind of like volunteering, because it's like you're not really getting paid for it, but you have responsibilities and you can't just like say like, oh, I'm not coming in today. And then when you're like below provincial level, so you're like a local athlete, conference athlete, city athlete, then it's a hobby. And no disrespect to anyone at any level of sport, but international level is quite difficult for that. You're going to need a coach that is really focused on your performance. They are essentially just as responsible for your performance as you are. And that coach, depending on who you are, I think that coach needs to be a little bit more of an authoritarian, almost like a boss, essentially. Like, hey, this is the standards to hit this level. We need to hit this year. We need to do this. If you want to go to this competition, you do this. This is how many times we're training a week. This is doing this. They set up the schedule. It should be like having a meeting with your boss or your manager at work when you're setting this stuff up. You do performance reviews, goal reviews, and there needs to be total transparency when you're communicating. There can't be lies being held from one another, because it's just going to destroy the program. So in that sense, I would say it's a little bit different from, but your coach and you should be working together to achieve the highest possible performance. And it's not really about having fun anymore. Your fun is based on your success level. So it's a huge, huge commitment. I've only coached one international athlete, and I didn't bring him up. I won't even really say I coached him. But essentially, I assisted him in his training. The athlete was Kevin Litwin. This was during his last years as a gymnast, and he didn't compete internationally during the time he was at our gymnastics club. But he finished his career as a national champion on high bar. But yeah, man, it wasn't easy for him. Like he was working and he was doing his master's degree at McMaster in mechanical engineering, and then he had to fit in his training. And like, dude, you had standards you have to fit. You have like data. You got to analyze your training. It's huge. It's a second job to be an international level athlete. And that coach has to be a total professional. That coach has to be all in, and that coach has to prioritize you over their other athletes. When you're that level, it's just like that. Maybe it sounds a little fascist, but that's the way it is. The highest performing athlete at the highest level needs more attention, but the attention the athlete gets, I think, should be directly proportional to the effort and the commitment they put into their training. Okay, so now we talked a little bit about the different levels of competition. Okay, and just a tiny bit we touched on what kind of coach and what kind of style of training you can expect, or lifestyle you can expect at that level. So in terms of choosing a coach, first and foremost, it is important to know that not everybody gets along, right? People don't always get along in the workplace or in school, but you got to respect everybody's right to be there, okay? So let's say your first coach is such and such, and maybe, you're making progress in your training, you're liking the results, you have a good friend group, but you just don't like your coach's personality, you disagree on political things or whatever, or like he likes ketchup, you like mustard, I don't know, whatever shit you want to come up with. And you're like, man, I don't like this guy. I gotta dip. This guy just pushes my buttons. You can do that if you really think it's impacting your ability to make progress. Then yeah, I would recommend doing that. But before you do that, talk to your coach, man, or girl, or whoever. Talk to your coach. Let them know, like, hey, if this is this, like, I'm noticing this. Like, what's your opinion and what do you think? Can we make any changes? First of all, if they're not willing to change, or that's that. Then I'd say you gotta find another coach. But some athletes, like I've had coaches who I didn't agree with their lifestyle. I didn't agree with the choices they made in their day-to-day life. I didn't agree with their sense of humor, their ideology on politics. But I'll tell you this, training, I was getting better every month, very consistently. I did have a few injuries, and that's kind of where we had our differences. But in competition, I was winning, and I was getting better every competition. So I'm thinking like, what's my goal here? What do I want to do? And I was competing nationally. At this time, we'd won international competition, but yeah, I was like, I'm staying here. Like, I even got offers from other coaches. Oh, come over here. Like, come to this province, doing this. And I was like, I don't know, man. It's working well. Like, yeah, I don't like the guy. I'm not going to go out and have coffee with him or hang out with him. But, dude, I'm getting better, and he respects me. I respect him. Like, what's the big deal? I don't know. But some people, they can't do that. They want to feel like really comfortable, really friendly with everyone. So if that's what you're looking for, you got to find a coach and a friend group or a training group that is very like-minded, or at least you have a lot of commonalities between them. And maybe that's your environment for achieving your best performance. Personally, I don't find that environment conducive to the highest level of performance in sport. I need a coach who's going to challenge me. I need a coach who's going to shit talk me a little bit, going to be like, yeah, Keenan, you know what? You think you're cool because you squatted 170 kilos for 3. Well, this guy, he's been training with us 6 months and he did 200 kilos for 3. And you're going to be like, all right, okay. All right, I'll show you. Push my buttons a little bit. Same with my training partners, but still have respect. I want my coach to be open to discussion. I want to be able to at least set up meetings with them if I'm concerned about how my training's going or if I'm injured. Talk about life, like if I have a conflict with my work schedule and training. I want a coach who's going to be able to adapt and is not just cut and dry. This is what it is, written in stone, follow the program, blah, blah, blah. No. I need a coach who's going to challenge me, but I need a coach who's adaptable, who's flexible, who's willing to bend to different situations, who can work with me. Questions that you should ask your coach, I would say, especially if you're a parent and you're involving your child in youth sports, I think this is probably the most important question, is what are your philosophies as a coach? Okay, like what are you using this sport to do? Obviously, different levels have different things. If you're an international level coach, like what are your philosophies? Like, I want to get so many athletes to this championships, I want to win medals at this. Okay, that's very performance related. When you're at the national level, it's like, hey, I want to get people to win some medals, but like make sure they learn some life lessons from the sport. And, you know, when they're done with the sport, they have a career, they have something to do. When you're provincial level, it's like, okay, hey, I want these people to achieve their best results, to achieve their own true potential. And then I want them to, you know, learn life lessons, have good relationships with people, have the sport be an outlet for their creativity or for their expression, you know, and come out safe on the other end when the sport is done. And for recreational, it's like, hey man, I want to have fun. I want to exercise. I want to move. I want to make good relationships, make friends, and I don't want to get hurt. Okay. So I'd say that's what you would expect from each level. But for me, my philosophy as a coach is, didn't matter whatever sport I was coaching, whether it was weightlifting, gymnastics, or track and field, or wrestling. My number one goal is use this sport to teach you how to be the best that you can possibly be and make the world a better place. The chips will fall where they fall. I will help you achieve the level of results that you want to achieve. No guarantees. There's no guarantees in life. But if you want to compete at that level, I'll tell you what is needed for that level. I'll tell you the standards you have to hit, and I'll help you make a plan to hit those standards. But my goal is not to win medals. My goal is not to make records. Sport will be done at one point. You will not be able to compete again. You might not even be able to train again. You might not even be able to be involved in the sport again, or might not want to. I hope that you have an overall positive experience from taking part in the sport that I'm coaching you in. Use it to better yourself. Use it to learn life lessons that are going to make you successful, and give back. Give back to the world. All right. Nice lean, tall posture. Put the foot down. Yeah, 6. So that's number one. What are your philosophies as a coach? Number 2 would be like something regarding injuries. So as a parent, a concerned parent, or as a mature athlete, I would say, what kind of injuries do your athletes experience the most? What's your plan? How do you deal with those injuries? And what does the training look like when those injuries come up? If you're an athlete at the provincial level or higher, you're going to get injured. That's fact. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Okay? A lot of people, I hear this from my parents or like older members of my family, they're like, this sport will destroy your knees. Hockey destroyed my knees. Weightlifting destroyed my back. You destroyed your knees. You destroyed your back. There's no inherent bad activity. There's no inherent bad movement. There's no inherent bad sport. Too much workload, too soon. Body's not prepared. Lack of recovery. Okay? When you're pushing it, and gymnastics, okay, for example, you got to do so many circles on the pommel horse. You're moving around. That's a lot of load on your wrist. It's like, dude, you got to hit so many reps of this skill. You got to do this. There's a time crunch. In that point, at that level, national, international level, you are sacrificing your health a little bit for performance. There is going to be times when you don't have the time to properly rehab stuff, and you got to weigh the risk to reward ratio on that. In my experience, I have always risked it, and I have to say, I'd say 75% of the time it did not pay off, and it just put me in a hole, and I kept digging, and the hole just kept getting deeper. So mitigation of risk, mitigation of injury is really important. So your coach should already be putting that in your training. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Or if you're under the metric system, a gram of prevention is worth a kilo of cure. So if your coach is like, athletes get injuries, it's a sport, people get injuries, what can I do? You should go to a physiotherapist if you have injuries. Bruh, that's a big cop-out. If your coach is not adjusting the training volume, the exercises, the intensity based on how your body's feeling and based on your injuries, I'd leave that coach right away. If your coach is like, listen, you have an injury, that's your problem. Nope, that ain't a coach. That isn't someone I'd send my child to. That isn't a coach I would want to coach me. No bueno. Back in the day, or in some countries like, China, maybe Russia, definitely North Korea, athletes are just expendable. So they don't care if you're hurt. They don't care if you're injured. They don't care if you have pain. They're like, oh, you're complaining? All right, dude, you're off the team. Let's get the next one. Bring in the next kid in. Bring in the next guy. They don't care. So they don't really have to worry about that. In countries like Canada, the US, a lot of European countries, like, we don't treat human beings like that. That ain't cool. So, sorry, I'm just picking up some cones here. In that case, we gotta protect our athletes. And just in any case, I think you should protect your athletes. It doesn't make sense to me if it's like, even if your athlete is winning world medals or Olympic medals and you're just like, doesn't matter. Well, I guess at that point they do protect them, but let's say you have a really, really good athlete and they just don't see like, hey, we got to invest in this athlete. We got to make sure they're healthy. We got to make sure their mood is good, their physical and mental health is good. That's what you got to do, man. So if your coach isn't into that, or isn't even willing to learn about injuries or learn new things, if your coach is like, nope, this is the only way that you can coach, this is the only way it can be done. I've been in this sport forever. This is the only way I do things. I know what the human body is. The human body doesn't change over time. We're doing it. We did it this way in the 80s. That's what we're doing it now. That's also not good. Like, at least try to talk to your coach and show them some facts, show them some evidence, or show them a trend. Like in your training, be like, coach, I noticed, like for me, for example, I was like, coach, every time I try to squat like super heavy to the max, like single, double, triple reps, I had pain in my back or I'm dead for the next training. So my coach and I were like, yeah, okay, so let's try to do the heavy squat the next day after training. You got a good sleep, you come in the next morning and do the squats, and dude, it totally changed everything. But sorry, there's a dog barking here. But you got to communicate with your coach first. You can't just be like, oh, like, hey, your coach is asking you how you feeling. You're like, I'm good. And then when something doesn't go right, you blame your coach. Like, oh, he pushed me too hard. Like, dude, you said you were good. Like, what is that? So you do have to be totally transparent. You got to be totally honest with them. But they can only meet you halfway. You can only meet them halfway, right? I truly believe it's a 50-50 partnership. Great coaches can make good athletes great. And great athletes can make shitty coaches look like good coaches. Sometimes, if a coach is like uberly excited to have you, it means they see you as the cash cow, the golden goose, and they just want you to make them look good, to like prove their point, like, oh, okay, come train with us here, you won't have to pay any training fees, blah, blah, blah. And I guess that's like, that's pretty appealing. Like, I don't have to pay training fees. Like, I'm not gonna lie, there might be certain times in my life where I would have really liked that offer. But if your coach is like too eager, it's like, kind of feels like you have a lump sum of money and some investment broker comes up to you like, hey, dude, like, we'd really love to have your money here. Like, oh, no, there's no fees in the management or whatever. And I'm like, are you going to lose my money? Or are you going to like take my money and do something with it? Like, I would just be a little bit suspicious. They should be welcoming to you, but they shouldn't be like treating you off rip like some sort of god or idol. And I think a lot of athletes have to worry about that. I think I see this a lot in, I know I see it a lot in more team sports. Like I've been seeing this in hockey. I see it in basketball, football, the golden goose, right? And the golden goose is just used to win medals and for the coach, for the team, and make the coach look good. And then, when they're done their career, they're like, all right, off, do whatever you want. And then the coach just goes like, I coach so-and-so, I know what I'm talking about, blah, 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 blah. So another thing I would ask, this segues into the next question, is I would ask the coach, not just about, I would say, like, what's the highest level athlete you've coached? Do they still train here? What was your experience coaching them? Are you willing to coach at that level again? And then, after that discussion, I would say, who's the lowest level athlete in your group? Because something I learned in gymnastics was you don't judge a coach's abilities by the best athlete that they coach, because anyone can have, like I said, the golden goose. Anyone can have just a stud that comes in, they already know what they're doing, they just have this God-given ability, they're awesome, and anything you throw at them, they're just gonna make better. You can just throw exercises and load at them, they're gonna get better, okay? But anyone can have that. Those are just like a needle in a haystack. But if everyone in your group, like let's say, okay, everybody in this person's group can back squat 2 times their body weight, I'd be like, dude, that coach knows how to get people strong in the squat. Or everybody for gymnastics, everybody in that coach's group, or everyone that person coaches, they have really good Diamidovs on parallel bars. I could be like, well, that coach is definitely good at teaching Diamidovs. If it's shot put in track and field and everyone like does the rotational technique when they're spinning around the circle before they throw, and everyone has really good rotational technique, I'd be like, well, then that coach is really good at teaching the rotational technique. So you have to look at the common denominator amongst the coach's group of athletes. That's how you judge the coach. Don't just judge by their best performing athlete, because it's also like looking at someone's like portfolio for their investments. We're like, oh, look, I'm so up on this one stock and it's making so much money for me. And you're like, oh, wow, like you've made $1,000 on this stock. And then you look at the other stocks in their portfolio and they're like down 10,000. You're like, I don't know if this guy's good at investing. I think he just has one stock that ended up doing well. So, yeah.